Hello, friends. Welcome back to Reality Check with Arvind Swaminathan. I am Arvind Swaminathan, and today I'm rather pained with the situation in Europe because it affects every one of us all over the world. Now, what is the problem? I mean, why? Well, Americans, we know they're warmongers and they incite people to fight one another because their main industry is armaments. And their military-industrial complex is laughing all the way to the bank because it means a lot of money. Why? America has been encouraging Ukraine to go into this sort of thing, to goad Russia to invade, without realizing the full impact. Now they're goading all of NATO countries to send weapons to Ukraine to prolong the fight, knowing that once that happens, Europe will have no armaments left, they'll need more back to the US. And their military-industrial complex will be laughing all the way to the bank. That means the owners, who are the bankers, they make a killing all over again. Remember, war is very, very big business. Has been since Napoleon and Napoleonic Wars. There's no getting away from that. Now, how did this happen? Why is most of Europe up in arms? I mean, it looks so close to and so very much like the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. The USSR was going to put missiles into Cuba, and Kennedy blockaded Cuba. No ship would go through without inspection, and they turned back these missiles. Fortunately, Russia came back. They could easily have done something else, but they didn't, because they knew a nuclear war doesn't help anybody. Unfortunately, here, the Americans don't have that sort of sense. They've never had that sort of sense. Let me also pose this question. When America attacked Iraq for no rhyme or reason, why did the world stay quiet? No sanctions, nothing? Why? And America had been pillaging and plundering and stealing Iraqi oil and gas since 2003 to date, without paying for any of it. And what have they done to Iraq? There's no electricity, shortage of fuel, even though Iraq is one of the biggest producers of crude oil. All the equality that women enjoyed, equal pay and so on, is gone. Most of your industries there have been bombed out. So what do Iraqis do? And you say, we've given them democracy. Where? Now, you attacked Afghanistan. What did you do there? You ran away from there and you armed the Taliban with now even an air force, something they never had before. And this proves that they are your people whom you put there in the first place, which means Americans never wanted to take out the Taliban. Then you have a covert war going on against Syria, another regime change effort. Fortunately, because it's on Russia's border, the Russians stepped in and stopped that. So now you're stuck with Afghanistan only. Then Obama and NATO attacked Libya. Why? What had Gaddafi done? Nothing. It was recolonization of a former colony. Except this time, it's not just Italy, but it's also France. France has taken over the South Libyan oil fields. Italy has taken over the only big or major oil refinery in Libya. They're using all of it for their own benefit. In fact, most of Europe cannot survive without huge amounts coming from their former colonies. And they still come. Now they're trying to take the colonies back. And America seems to be helping them. In fact, in some places, the American East India Company than the French and the Italians. And unfortunately, the British seem to have missed out. Does that make sense? No. Now, what has happened here? I mean, why is Ukraine in such a mess? And the piggy in the middle. The USA goaded Ukraine to push Russia over the hilt. And once that happens, when a man is cornered, he turns around and fights. He comes out, he kicks, bites, scratches, and really takes chunks out of you. And he will. And that's what's happening to Ukraine. They're bearing the brunt of all the frustration and anger which the Americans have built up all over the place. And why? Because Russia provides the main energy, or is the main energy source for most of Western Europe. Now, they were negotiating with Germany for a pipeline which comes through Finland, under the Baltic, straight to Germany. It bypasses Ukraine. Now, the Americans did not want this. Obviously. Why? I'll explain that in a minute. The present one going through Ukraine is vulnerable. So, the Americans spiked that one. No, I'm talking about the direct link via Finland. Why? At the moment, 70 to 72% of European gas comes from Russia via Ukraine. Once that pipeline comes in under the Baltic, 75, maybe more percent of Western Europe's gas or oil will come from Russia, which the Americans don't want. Now, all the sanctions against Russia from Europe, like shooting themselves through their own foot. Why? The gas coming from Russia costs Germany $270 per 1,000 cubic feet. The same gas coming from the US costs $1,000 per cubic foot. No, per 1,000 cubic feet. Why are you prepared to pay 3 times the amount of your own energy source? And then you grumble and you want to take over more West Asian oil. Saudi Arabia had better be very careful. They've got a huge American base there. Now, the Americans have taken out Iraq. They've messed up Syria totally. They're trying to mess up Iran. They couldn't quite succeed in Turkey. What does that mean? Isn't this classic British East India Company in India, except this is the American East India Company in West Asia? Once all these different countries have been subdued, what's to stop them from pushing the Saudis out and saying, okay, we're taking over? You begin to understand the American game plan. In this conflict in Ukraine, they've goaded Ukraine to push Russians over the hilt. Now, once they've got there and Russia has attacked, they could have flattened Ukraine inside a week. But they've been very careful not going into civilian areas. And if the present president of Ukraine, Mr. Zelensky, if he starts sending militia and armed people into these civilian areas, the Russians will have no choice but to flatten that too. Then don't blame Russia. Blame yourselves and blame the USA. Every war, every major conflict since 1946, the Americans, i.e. the USA, has been behind. Why? Again, the military-industrial complex. That is the only thing which has kept the American economy booming. Nothing else. All the others are gone. The motor car industry, Detroit is a ghost town. What else was there? Now, the American game plan here is quite simple. Goad Ukraine into a fight with Russia, they get flattened. But once the NATO countries send their weapons in, where will they get their own? They have to go back to the US, military industrial complex, laughing all the way to the bank. Now, what most of these NATO countries do not understand, they have never understood and they don't want to understand, is this. When you've got this huge alliance and you've got Russia here, any spark that sets off a conflict between the two, who are the first people who are going to get really flattened? Those nearest and in Western Europe. NATO was never designed to protect Western Europe. They don't understand this. They don't want to understand it. Now, I can't understand, are they that silly? Don't they have any brains? As I've just said, those closest the Russian border will just get flattened. There's no other way. Because even if there is a conflict with America, they cannot allow American or Allied bases anywhere near their borders. Those will be the first one taken out. Don't they understand that? Now, if they do understand, why are they behaving like this? Now, the other thing you've got to remember is this. The USA and UK and Western Europe have never attacked a European country. The white Europeans have never been touched by them. They seem to be sacrosanct. Whom do they attack? Non-Europeans like Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Libya, South Americans, Central Americans, but not white Europeans. This is racism at its extreme, at its worst. White European supremacy, nothing else. And slowly, what are they trying to do? A, get back all the old colonies, which I hope never happens. More important, if Russia does get wiped out or beaten up badly, they want to take in all of the Russian resources and get rich. This is the other big part of the USA's game plan, to take over all the land in Russia. And they won't give up without a fight. They've got enough firepower to do it themselves. And as he has warned, Mr. Lavrov has warned, the next war, or World War III, will be a nuclear war. How much of Western Europe and how much of the USA and how much of Russia will remain habitable? How many of their, or what percentage of their population will survive it? And how long will they survive if they're exposed to radiation? Now, America is playing a very, very dangerous and nasty game, that they will do everything and then claim, no, the other person did it. This has been their game ever since white Europeans first went to the Americas. They make treaties and break them. They have no intention of keeping treaties. Now, when Gorbachev, for instance, decided the Soviet Union was going to break up, they were going to get out of Eastern Europe, he did that only on the assurance that NATO would not expand into East European countries. And what was the first thing they did? Within a year or two of Gorbachev leaving, they started soaking up all these former Soviet republics. Now, Ukraine was the last one. But it is also right on Russia's border. Ukraine had nothing to worry about as long as they didn't make noises about joining NATO. And I'll give you an example. Finland borders Russia. It has been neutral since before World War II. It is still neutral. Have they ever had any problems with the USSR? No. Any problems with today's Russia? No. So why is Western Europe so frightened that they take up all these republics and form this NATO union? As I said before, it is not there to protect Western Europe. It can't. Because they are too close to the Russian border. And the Russians cannot afford to leave them be. To take on the USA, first they'll have to flatten Europe. And they can do it with their nuclear firepower, let's face it. If America thinks they can get away with it, they're sadly mistaken. The Soviet Union and Russia have never invaded any other country, but this is like the Cuban Missile Crisis. Except the Americans didn't fight, but pushed somebody else forward. And they've been playing this game for years. You supply weaponry, get the other person to fight and get killed. It's not American blood that gets spilled, but some other hapless people who are too silly to understand this game. Well, folks, thank you very much. I hope you like this. Please send this on to all your friends, relatives, your groups and other groups. Subscribe, and please do so quickly because I don't know when they might take it off. I mean, YouTube have already taken one or two of mine off, so I don't know how long this will remain. So please do disseminate this, pass it on to others, and please subscribe, especially if you like this. Thank you very much for listening. All the best and see you next time.
Go again. 10, 9, 8, 7. Ah, fuck it, just play the tune.